We thank everyone for watching. Standing by from our Abuja studio, Celestine Okeke, who is a lead partner at CEDI. Thank you very much, Celestine. Let's continue this conversation on smallholder farming in Nigeria. And just before the break, we're talking about what we need to do in terms of policies. Do you think we need to rejig agricultural policies? Do you think the farmers, the smallholder farmers, have enough knowledge? What's your experience of sitting down with some of these farmers in some particular parts of the country?
Okay, so for the policy area is a very complex issue, and I think it will take a long time to discuss it. We have the agricultural promotion policy as of date, also called the grain alternative, and it stipulates how the administration wants to go smallholder farming in Nigeria, or agric entirely. But two key things caught my attention in that policy document. The ministry admitted that agric research in Nigeria is at its lowest ebb. It also says that the research councils in Nigeria are not able to take knowledge from, say, IIT and apply it to smallholder farmers. Then secondly, it admits that climate change is a big challenge, that it is going to work around issues of climate change for smallholder farmers. That was early 2016. But from that time till now, it has not done anything on these two key issues, the issue of climate change and the issue of research in Nigeria. Now, what is the challenge in our opinion? The challenge for us is that most times when government wants to do policy for either the agri sector or for the power sector and the regs, it engages consultants who are very experienced, who are knowledgeable on these issues. And in the process of formulating these policies, they cut off the ministries, departments and agencies that are meant to implement the policies. So you have some consultants who sit in their offices, develop good policy documents, transmit it to the MDAs, who then see these documents, and it sounds very strange and very difficult to implement for them. So what then happens is you find the MDAs going on a long stretch of programs that are not directly linked to the policies. And let me explain something. The Ministry of Agric has done quite a number of projects between 2016 and December 2018. 50% of those projects are not in line with the agricultural promotion policy, which is a policy document of this government. Because those who design the policy are cut off from those who are going to implement the policies. So we need to get to the point where we are not doing a 3-year, a 4-year policy for agric in Nigeria. We need to have a long-term, a 5 to 10-year plan for agric in Nigeria to say, look, what are the present challenges we have for agric? What are the anticipated challenges we think we might have in the next 2, 3, 4 years? And draw up a long plan for it to be addressed. And one key thing that is a challenge for policy in Nigeria is, at some point in time in Nigeria, we thought procurement shouldn't be an all-commerce affair. And we created a new cadre in the civil service for procurement officers. So you created professional procurement officers that handle procurement in all MDAs. But for agric, you could see a director being moved from Ministry of Health to agric as a director for input or essential services. A director is moved from Ministry of Power or Works to agric to head one critical department. So what you then have is people who are not knowledgeable about agric, taking key decisions on what happens for agric. So when they then see policy documents that are very good, they find it difficult working with it because they can't even read and understand what those policies say. So we are saying government should get to the point where we professionalize agric in Nigeria. If from rank of assistant director to PAMSEC and minister must be persons who are competent enough to manage agric in Nigeria. If we continue to do this habit of taking somebody from health, from environment, from water resources to become a director, to become a PAMSEC, Minister of Agric, we will not go far with policy design and implementation in Nigeria.
Thank you. So let's just step back a little bit into what you say, looking into the future and preparing and getting the life jacket, as it were, ready for it. For example, we've seen since 2012 recurrence of flooding across all the way from the north through the Niger, whatever it is, all the way down to Bayelsa. Hundreds of billions of naira of crops were lost and all of that. Rail lines and highways were washed away. This year is another example. Have you heard of anything as if we had a plan, a cogent plan, maybe if this will reoccur next year, another 2 years or 3 years' time?
Okay, so in the agri promotion policy of this government, they have the Agricultural Resilience Framework, NAF. And the whole idea is that it's the document that will determine how we would address the impacts of climate change, including mitigation and adapting to the impacts of climate change. But like I said in the last statement I made, that policy has not gone to FEC, the Federal Executive Council. So effectively, we don't have a central plan on how to help farmers to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change. So what farmers basically do is to use the knowledge available to them, which in most cases is very limited. So they are not able to mitigate, they are not able to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Even for Jigawa State, where they lost 125,000 hectares of plantation, the only thing the government says it's trying to do is to procure early maturing seed and distributing to the farmers. But if you recall that we have had issues of fake adulterated seed in Nigeria, especially in the northwest and the northeast, and government wants to procure seed from sources we are not even sure if the seeds will be genuine. We are not yet addressing that challenge. So it's for the Ministry of Agri to go back and say, look, the agri-resilience framework we talked about in 2016 under the APP, what point are we today on that program, on that policy, for instance? When are we going to launch that policy? When are we going to begin to help smallholder farmers understand how to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change? Because if they can't mitigate and adapt to the impacts, they will continue to farm as they used to farm. And if they continue to farm as they used to farm, the impact of climate change, like you said, from 2012 to date, is on the increase. You can imagine 125,000 hectares lost in Jigawa State only in 2018 planting season. What will it be in 2019 planting season? So, but then you don't get disheartened when you don't find that kind of connect between the federal ministry and the state ministry to address the impacts of climate change. So as it stands, there is no work from the federal government or any state government that we know of that is helping farmers mitigate and adapt to climate change impacts.
Let's talk about innovative technology, and earlier also spoke about using drones to monitor your farms. We did well with electronic wallet, as it were, in the early days. But do you think these smallholder farmers have all the information they need at their fingertips when you talk about technology? Technology, of course, also costs money.
No, they don't. They don't. I'll be very honest with you. One thing that is working in Nigeria is donor-funded programs. When you see FAO, Food Agriculture Organization, IFAD, bringing projects, they work. But the question is, these programs are volatile because the fundings are 3, 4, 5 years term funding, after which they pull out. So for technology, for instance, now, anybody who is able to use drone is not a 2.5 hectare smallholder farmer. You wouldn't do 2.5 hectares, you're buying drone. What is it going to cover for you? And recall that we said in the opening statement that 90% of smallholder farmers in Nigeria are doing between 2.5 to 3 hectares. So where will you procure a drone to cover a 2.5 hectare land? That's not profitable. Then for other technologies that we need to support agriculture in Nigeria, you would find, for instance, in Jigawa State, where IFAD is doing some program with in 17 local governments, helping farmers do community seed production, introducing technologies that are able to produce seed for farmers in their communities. It's happening. In Kaduna State, there's a World Bank program presently happening, appeals, helping farmers adapt and use more technology in their farming. That's good. But the question now is, when they do pull out at the end of the program, which is almost like 4 or 5 years period, these farmers are not able to continue using those technologies because it is not a transfer. It's just they are just helping them use what they have brought into the country. So in terms of technology for Nigeria, it is really not happening. And let's not forget the fact that we have said earlier that farming in Nigeria for smallholder farmers is between 2.5 to 3 hectares per farmer. Anybody who is doing 2.5 to 3 hectares in Nigeria is very small, is more like a subsistence farmer. Why will he procure money to buy a drone or buy other technologies? Until we begin to move our farmers from doing 2.5 to 3 metric ton on the average to 5 to 6, 7 metric ton hectares per farmer, we will not get to the point where they will be able to procure on their own. Self-innovation is not happening because you are barely harvesting, you're selling everything you're harvesting. The funds is not even enough to meet your livelihood needs. So we need to move our farmers from being subsistence farmers to being smallholder farmers who are productive and making much gain from their investments.
Do you think, and this was part of what you put in this a table about the challenges in the agriculture sector in Nigeria, when you talk about the absence of precision agri techniques, how much more education do you think we can give to these people who have grown all through these years, barely literate, barely able to read and write, but we can't take them out of the value chain? At the same time, we need to bring folks like you and I, who are in this very fancy suits and ties and things like that, speaking some phonetics here, into agriculture value chain. So how do we get it, including the youth who are now literate, much better than their parents, their dad, their grandfathers and grandmoms, and women who are also involved in this? How much education do you think we need to give them? How do we need, what do we need to build between the existing or our past and the future of agriculture, which is not just for those who are barely literate, but those who are, if you are barely literate, you need to have the right information at your fingertips to get things done.
Okay, so in responding to that, precision agric is not a new term. It's been happening long before now. And let me clear something. If you go to US and you find an average American speak English, it may not necessarily be because he has gone to university or has a master's or a PhD. English is native to an American. He speaks English. So if you find a Nigerian who is not able to speak English, it may not necessarily mean that the person is not literate. It's just that the person is not able to communicate in your English language. And why am I saying that? What happens is this. Precision agriculture simply says for every square meter on earth, there is a crop best suited to be planted on that square meter. And for that crop, there's a best way to plant it. There's a best way to manage it, and there's a best way to harvest and process it. If you miss any of these links, then you are having a problem. So you see soil scientists in Nigeria have developed soil mapping, which says, for instance, in Abuja, in this area, what is best suited for this place is maize. If you don't plant maize here, you might still get some yield, but it will be very low because you're not doing precision agric. So what we need to do is to build this body of knowledge and use extension agents to transfer it to smallholder farmers. They don't need to know how to speak English or how to speak Yoruba or how to speak Hausa. In their own local languages, you can get extension agents that will be able to communicate these things to them to say, look, if you want to plant maize and you say you don't want rain to wash it off and you put the seed so deep into the earth, it will struggle to sprout. And once it sprouts, it has little energy to grow up. That knowledge is absent for many smallholder farmers in the maize area, for instance. We need to build this body of knowledge, which is why I said, look, we need to have a good agricultural practices. We don't have that. As little as that, people into maize plantation don't even know how to put the maize into the earth. They don't know how to care for it. The only thing they know is what their fathers or what their friends have told them. If we develop this body of knowledge, I tell you, anybody can take it to Benue, to Taraba, to Jigawa, to Borno, to Yobe, and tell farmers how to do it. But because we don't have this body of knowledge, if we employ 100 million agri-extension agents today, what knowledge are they going to transfer on the field to farmers? That is what the challenge is. It's not about whether there is a language problem or a literacy problem. It's because the knowledge we need to transfer to smallholder farmers is almost absent. And because it's absent, we then think farmers don't understand or are not literate enough to use information.
You've related with the Ministry of Agriculture and this foreign interventions, whether it's a DFID or FAD or FAO, as it were. What's your experience in dealing with these folks, looking at the gaps we need to fill in terms of areas of those who will be on the field, those who will be the agents, those who will communicate with the farmers, those who will put very critical education or knowledge to them, put it across to them as to increase productivity, increase yield, reduce the labor, and things like that?
Okay, so there's a research done by IFPR, in the International Food and Policy Research Institute. And one amazing thing from that research is that Nigeria is among the top 5 countries in Africa that have the highest number of researchers. We have 500 full-time equivalent researchers in Nigeria. But the challenge is this. These researchers are persons who have little or no knowledge that they can transfer to the field. We have over 10 active research institutes for almost all crops in Nigeria. But the question is what body of knowledge do they have at their disposal? And then you find an IFAD program, an FAO program comes into Nigeria. There's one that was called South-South Cooperation, in which they brought Chinese farmers into Nigeria to teach farmers how to do the basic things for agri. But the disconnect in that program is they didn't pass through the Agri-Extension Services Department of the Ministry of Agric. So you are working with farmers who may not get this knowledge within a 2-3 year period. Even if they they're getting it in the local government you're working in one state. You've cut off the Ministry of Agric-Extension Services Department. So when you then pull out of the country 3-4 years after, these persons who have the knowledge are not able to transfer it. So there's also a problem on how donor agencies come to fund programs in Nigeria. But you may not blame them because most times, I remember when you said USAID wanted to do Trade Hub. That was in 2013, 2014. Trade Hub was meant to improve farmers' productivity for smallholders in Africa. And for a period of between 8 to 10 months, they tried bringing the program to Nigeria. It didn't work. They had to move, Trade Hub to Ghana. It's happening in Ghana today, and every progress Ghanaian government has made in improving smallholder farming between 2014 till date is a function of the Trade Hub in Ghana.
Celestine Okeke, thank you very much. This is a very conversation you're very passionate about, but we've got about enough time for today. Thank you very much. We appreciate your very brilliant and incisive conversation and an insight into what's going on in smallholders farming in Nigeria. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day and your weekend all the way till Thursday when everybody's back to business. Let's come back after the break. The marketplace and how do you relax during this long holiday period? Okay, you heard about how the stock market here finished on a very wonderful note yesterday. The first trading day of the week. We don't know what's going to happen on Thursday. With almost everyone out of town, I'm still the only one, looking I'm the only one here remaining in town, Market Street. And Temple Ashaju, of course, is off the grid today. So we'll give you the details about the market and try to break it down for you. Yesterday, we clawed back about 480 billion naira in our equities capitalization. On a day, we sold almost 1 billion shares. How did that happen? Got no idea. Look, folks are perhaps trying to get a little bit back from what has been lost. It's been a very blistering year for the Nigerian market. We were down about nearly 20% year to date. What with yesterday's 3.88% positive reading, we're trying to reduce that to some barest minimum. These are what's called the devils in the details. But yesterday there was no devil on Market Street. It was all Santa Claus giving the market back well above 31,000, flirting with 32,000. Perhaps that will happen on Thursday and Friday. Equity cap is heading back towards 11.7 trillion naira as well. If you love the numbers, flip it over. Look at the value. We traded more than 5 billion naira shares in one day because Dangote, Nestle, the big banks were all part of that rally. But show me the sectors, and you see almost everyone was in the green. In fact, all the big five were in the green, from oil and gas, where the news around 40 oil, shares or whatever, is still making the rounds. Banking industry, 1.38%. That was solid if you know the size of the market of the banking sector and what they bring to the table. Consumer goods was big, 5.49%. Their cousins, the industrials, were also big because Dangote Cement was among the top there. They find insurance targeting their cousins, the banks, by almost 1%. Oil and gas was 5.69%. Oil and gas story is very interesting. So take us to that page, shall we? Okay, look at 40 oil, up almost 10%, 2.183 million ordinary shares of 40 oil sold, finishing Monday at 31.25 on the counter. Wando came in, another oil major, 1.05%. In positive territory, more than 2 million shares as well. Seplat, the only EMP, almost 10%. If you flip that page, you see also that in the green, going back to 642.9. And Japol, 1.196 shares for just about 20 kobo. Their price was unchanged. So if you look at the big movers there, was Seplat, 40 oil, and Owando. The unlisted securities market was largely unchanged. Perhaps those folks left for Christmas before the rest of us. So it was unchanged, but of course they didn't. About 45.1 million unlisted securities were traded on Monday, just crossing about 3 transactions. That's what the flip side will show you. The USI remained unchanged, 712.39. The market closed, and everyone seems to close early. And the entire bit of the themes as we go from the equities market to the debt market seem to change a bit. So if you finish off with me, the FMDQ OTC securities market, you find just about double-digit 85 billion naira worth of treasuries traded in less than 300 transactions. Are you looking at the rate there in the second column? That's 15.2 for you for bills maturing 10th of January next year, 20th February 2019, 14.7%. That tells you where rates are heading, and you can see things moving up, right? Good. Okay, finally, let's just wrap up with you on what we talked about this yesterday. Most in case you missed it, there's what you called the Relaxnomics. Is from this micro one is financial derivatives company. How do you relax during this holiday? 40-page document, 8 areas for you to talk about how to relax. This is what it comes out. Okay. What's the first page? I really love that first. I want you to talk about Relaxnomics of what you call the Relaxnomics Christmas 2018 edition. And then you find those key areas, whatever is your choice, whether it is travel, sports, puzzles, wedding, food, lifestyle, technology, or money. Make it very profitable. Let's get together tomorrow.